Well, a very interesting article that we have in the Star this morning regarding also the toing and froing between who now actually should take that particular seat in the Iyala when it comes, or who should be proffered there. And we have Salat there versus Moi, big fight in Kano over Iyala positions. This has been also seen in ODM with the Parliamentary Service Commission, and this is what we were discussing regarding also party leaders and having some of their relatives taking these positions at the end of the day. Before we took a short break, we were to hear from Faramalim. Faramalim, I hope you've not lost your track of thought.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that if one is convinced that the best person for this particular job is a relative, I don't see anything wrong with that myself. You see that relative is his own legal personality, has a right to contribute to this country in the best possible way he can.
Okay.
And if he's the best person for that, let me just give you a simple example. The Kennedys, there were 3 Kennedys in government at the same time. John F. Kennedy was the president, and Bobby was the Attorney General, and Teddy ran for the Senate. You see what I mean?
And won.
And won.
Yeah.
Yes, and Teddy stayed for the longest. Edward Kennedy. And look at the Clintons. Hillary is such a powerful lady, and won the election actually by over 3 million. It's just that the Electoral College messed her, and a number of other issues that were mentioned there. So Hillary, as far as I'm concerned, would have been one of the best presidents America has ever had. But nonetheless, she had her own way of contributing. Barack won against her. One of initially in the primaries for the Democrats, and appointed her as the Secretary for State because she was just exceptionally good. She had a lot to do with the Medicare, when Clinton was there. So to victimize, and if you remember the history of, Juan Perón of Argentina and Isabel Perón, and the one who is now the vice president, the one who just got almost assassinated the other day, the lady, so if you are convinced that your brother is the best for this, and I also remember when we had 2 brothers, father and son were there. Raila ran in Kibra, the father ran in Bondo, and we were in parliament with both of them, son and father. And we ended up also with 2 brothers in the same term because Jaramogi passed on.
Okay, they ran. The operative word is they ran.
Coming to that.
They ran for this seat.
I'm coming to that.
We're talking about.
I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. Come on, just give me a moment. So, and then we of course had Oburu who ran for what do you call the Bondo seat? No, the Bondo seat.
The Bondo seat then.
And won, and for the longest. And by the way, Oburu is a brilliant fellow in his own right, extremely sharp, and was an A student throughout his life. You get my point. Actually, it's because of a spat between Jaramogi and Kari Francis that Oburu did not go to Alliance High School. He was the one who was supposed to have gone those days, colonial time.
He tells me that story.
Between the mathematics
teacher
himself
and the principal. You get my point. Or whatever it was. So then because of that, he never took him in.
Yes.
But then went, I think, to St. Mary's Yala. Am I right? He got to Yala or one of the other schools, and still was an A student, and maybe even got his PhD. He couldn't go to West European universities because his father was an avowed communist. So he had to go to an East European country and all the way to his PhD. So Oburu, I think, is there up to the issue of whether he should be nominated by the party for the slot of
the Parliamentary
Service Commission. I have my reservations about that because this is now a party decision, and the party leader is his own brother, and this is basically it has more to do with PACs. Let me tell you one thing. Everybody who's running to go to the Parliamentary Service Commission is not running to that place because he wants to do a very good job in MP's welfare and the rest of it, but because there are a lot of benefits in there. You get a government car, you get your own staff, you get a lot of things, an office that's better than the other. So it's a bit of PACs that are involved in there. And I think we made one mistake. The reason why Raila is not the president of the Republic of Kenya today is because they couldn't allow Wetangula to maintain that small position of being minority leader in the Senate. And they threw him out to replace him with another Luo from Luo Nyanza, at that time James Orengo. You see what I mean? A decision that Raila lost big time. But it cost him the presidency of this country. This guy just goes back, gets all the sympathy of his own people, and walks away also with 300,000 Mukusu votes and takes them to UDA. You get my point? And UDA. And then, if you only had 70,000 votes, it would have been a second run for us in Azimio. So sometimes I get the feeling that some people, like the way Raila did that time, get a little bit too narrow in such decisions. So today, if I were Raila, I wouldn't give my brother the slot for the PSC. I'll give it to Omogeni, Omongo Omogeni, who comes from the same region, who's also a senator, who has supported Raila for the longest, at least for quite a while. And I think that, in my opinion, would be a mistake if that happens. But let me tell you one thing about ODM and my good old friend and brother, Raila Odinga. He easily falls victim to some of these temptations to push his relatives or kinsmen into positions where there's an element of economic benefit. Look at the leadership of the party all the time. We threw out people like Megarer, and who did we bring in there? Just because they wanted to control the money. You get my point? Okay. The party basically is a Luo party. But this is a national party that has support in the four corners of the country. But when it comes to resources and managing of resources, then you cannot turn it into a small family affair. So whenever money is involved, I know in ODM the decision is always one that is skewed not in the best interest of the party in the long run. You know what I mean? But with a little bit of financial benefits here and there. And that is very wrong. That's very, very wrong. Including not being able to honor the agreements they have with the other parties. You remember we had NASA, and we signed an agreement on how to share the political parties' kitty in Serena. And I was there. I was one of the people who were there, and up to the last moment when it was drafted and signed. And the moment the money came out, we're still asking them to send us some 75 million Kenyan shillings, and they're not willing to do that. Where money is involved, ODM and Raila usually there's a bit of a temptation. There's an element of weakness. It's a human weakness. So the same weakness.
How would you help a brother?
I don't know how to help him. I've tried to do it for the longest on that issue. I don't think he can be helped.
But if you actually 4 committees that it's been contested.
No. He says 2 committees.
He says he's in 2.
But 2 committees, already 2 committees too many. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. How then do you spread yourself? It's too many 2 committees.
No, you have to get about 2 committees.
Minimum.
But then there are people who had 3 or 4. But depending really, some of them are like the fringe committees without belittling any of them. But then the good thing about Senate, if you're on the majority side, you are almost guaranteed of being in a committee leadership position. So like for me, I was a vice chairman of Finance and Budget Committee. Then I ended up in the speaker's panel. But the leadership there, leader of majority and such, they were not in committees, deliberately. Because if you are in it, how do you become a majority leader, and then you're also in the committee, say, on devolution? How will you even relate with your chairman, who you actually appointed or helped to get the position? So I think it's just good manners. I remember even when Duale was our leader in the National Assembly, he was not in any of committees. So to hold it over and have so many of them. By the way, just like Honorable Wanjiko has said here, if you're in more than 2 committees, you cannot be effective.
You cannot be effective.
Yeah, because where do you get time to be in this committee? Some of them have clashing at times when they're meeting. There are trips, they are report writing, whatever. So how do you? But then I saw greed in the 11th Parliament. The people who are on the selection committee, they would take 5 committees and then take time to see which one is lucrative. Then resign off. I was in one committee for a whole 1 year until I stood on the point of order and argued, and I was dismissed as I was told this is not the streets. But eventually it gave me a committee of rules and procedure, which was like, it's just, you are just being told, stay there. For the sake
pacified somehow.
Yeah, but it is not an effective committee. So there are committees that people know that if you are there, then you have more power, a committee that will help you maybe, get jobs here, lobby for a road there. And that's normal. I mean, it's part of parliamentary practice. Even if you go to America, lobbying is part and parcel of it. But then now to have 4 committees.
Barrels, they call them pork barrels.
Yeah, when other people don't have, these, that is the greed of the highest order.
So how then do you distribute, because you have caucuses also, isn't it?
No, it's the work of the whip to do so. But he has to look at, he or she has to look at the strength of each and every member. Because you see, for example, let me just give, we were in Jubilee, but we could appreciate Orengo and Wetangula as some of the best brains on the other side, So you have also you put talent where it fits best. But if you're just doing it for gender, not for gender, for regional purposes, and then you ignore even women, for example, who can contribute to become a chair of a committee, and you say, this one cannot work. That's where the problem is. Unfortunately, politics does not reward, competence. Politics rewards loyalty. That's what it is. And sometimes some of the most, sorry to put, mediocre people are the ones who are given those leadership positions, and you have to do the work as they get the credit. You know the point. But that's the nature of politics. However, to have as many committees as there can be is really not even feasible. The other thing that also I want to say is that there are also people shadowboxing one another. If I put that one in that committee and becomes the chair, he will overshadow me. He will outshine me. He will be the one to be seen. By the end of the day, that is how we end up having the work of the parliament being compromised. But be that as it may, I don't think, in my humble submission, much as we have supported the fact that Oburu is a senator for Siaya, I don't think he should, because the Parliamentary Service Commission position is really an appointment of the party. So it should be given to somebody else, really, so that it doesn't seem like it is obvious that he's the one who's supposed to be.
But why don't you have the discretion, you yourself, if you see you've been selected, your name has been selected in all these committees, instead of waiting for you to come now and blow up in the National Assembly, you just, move forward and say, by the way, I really appreciate that my name has been fronted, but I want just to, maybe recuse myself from all this.
So let me tell you why. Let me tell you why it doesn't happen. So, first and foremost, politics is about reward and punishment. So you get flattered that you have been proposed, and these names, you only see them when they are now in the order paper. You don't know before. Like there was a time.
You don't know.
Yeah, there was a time Majiko Mohi and I caused a ranker in the National Assembly until the House Business Committee could not be appointed, if you remember. Yes. It was at least delayed by a day. We can give ourselves credit for that. Because it was not very representational. So
even this for Iyala, I didn't know until I saw the order paper.
Exactly.
So you're not privy.
You can't tell.
But at least from the people who are lobbying, you can get an idea.
No. Until you in politics, anything you are promised.
Everyone is hiding.
Yes. Until you see it, that's when you can know that actually you're being considered. But so that then you don't have a chance to say. But after that, you can then go and withdraw. However, politics is a very selfish game. If you have been given, how many will actually want to say now, I donate to? Very few will be that magnanimous.
Personally, I would.
Yeah, but Wajiko is exceptional. But majority of politicians, even if they are to donate, they will donate the ones that are less lucrative. Because if I have 5 committees, then I will see, okay, if it's energy and administration, I take those ones. You can take those ones if you are complaining. So you can get into my list about the habari.
But anyway, it's about manners, personal integrity, and personal feeling. You should let the rest of the members also feel comfortable, because these are colleagues you'll work with in a term of 5 years. And I remember Honorable Buru and myself were the commissioners in Iyala, because every partner state has 2 commissioners. So he has already served in Iyala 5 years, like I have done as a commissioner. It's also like a Parliamentary Service Commission. And our term ends in 2.5 years in Iyala, and when we went for review, members said for Kenya, we proposed that these 2 continue. So considering even the time he has served, unlike maybe some of us, I think it was only fair if he could let it go to someone else. But that notwithstanding, his experience, his wisdom is of course on a very high note, and we tapped a lot that in Iyala.
Okay. All right, I think that has been said. I want us just to focus lastly on what is on the front page of the Star as well. And this is regarding the Hustler Fund, as you can see it. There you have it. Ruto makes big about turn on Hustlers Fund. If we may just go flip over there to a page for where the story is. And this is regarding now, because on the campaign trail, we had the promise that this hustler fund will not be pegged on any collateral. But now it seems they're changing tone on this, that it will be, just flip on the other page, that it will be drawing an interest at the end of the day. Do you think that in any way is going to take the thunder out of this hustler fund? And in light of what we are seeing currently, especially with the CBK lending rate also being revised, many banks now will be notifying their customers and clients regarding this particular interest. So if you're servicing a mortgage, if you have a facility for your business as well, the interest is bound to spike, because also the reality of what is happening currently in the world. We can see in the UK also this is a big issue. KTN?
I don't think this fund should be put in there. You can't talk of interest. Interest?
It should be devoid of interest.
It should be devoid of interest. Because, I mean, you're trying to bring up the lowest of the low. You're trying to bring people right there at the bottom. And you tell them you have to pay a certain interest on these small loans. It doesn't work that way. It's a mistake. You have to, the government has to make that conscious decision of putting in that money in there and allowing the people. You can monitor it. You can find a way of monitoring it so that somebody does not go and drink Shanghai with it, or go and misuse it somewhere else, or end up marrying an additional wife or whatever it is. But then make sure that thing has an effect. It has an impact, and then reward the impact. Reward the impact. You say, for example, if you're given 100,000 shillings as a hustler down there, and you're able to show through your own systems that you have put this to good use, and you have your 200,000-300,000 shillings over a period of time, and you're able to take care of your family, then you'll be given again this incentive and that incentive. I think putting that fund away for the sake of the people right at the bottom there, in my opinion, is something that's devoid of any financial, considerations, financial wisdom considerations. This is purely it's a social welfare state. Let's treat this as a social welfare state.
But how will you grow this fund?
Well, you grow the fund by making it a revolving fund.
Because you're not given any assurance that everyone is going to pay back the money, so that money can be revolving. You've seen what is happening also with HELB as well. It's meant to be a revolving fund, but people are not, they're defaulting their payment.
If you're going to put in the kind of interest rates that are prevalent in the developed world, which is anything from 2.5% to 3 or 4, maximum, that's understandable. But if you're going to go for this punitive financial institutions capture of third world countries, where you're going to ask for 15% or 14% or 13%, then that does not work. You don't give somebody 100,000 shillings and tell him every year you'll have to pay 10,000 plus or 16,000 of that as an interest on the side, and you still have to refund the principal amount over a period of time. No. That's not the way things should happen. In any way, let me tell you that in my opinion is usury. Usury. You know what I mean? It's look at the. I was asking. I wanted to buy back some of my pension there the other day, and they come up with a figure and they said you took. And that's only for the last 10 years, by the way, because I've been out of Parliament now for the last 10 years.
But you've done very well to remain relevant.
I've always been relevant. I always used to be rigged out. I never lost an election, by the way.
You were rigged out.
The system, it was a question of who was counting it. That's what I said. This is one of the best.
No politician loses their seat.
No. In my case, by the way, some of the kind of historical injustices that we need to deal with is the electoral historical injustices. People whose rights to serve their people were taken away. As a historical injustice, by the way, you agree with me? And this has got to be, we should have a commission of inquiry into these things, to go back into some of these things and say, so-and-so indeed, ideally was elected at the time, but he lost. We're not asking we're not asking for compensations, but at least we're asking for, like the truth and justice, and reconciliation. And at least people at the back of mind, you can say, I should have been there for X number of times. That's why I came back.
It is for healing purposes.
Yeah.
For closure.
Yes, for closure. I came into Parliament at a very young age in 1992. Was there for 5 years. Was rigged out in the 1997 elections. And at that time, the late president and people around him told me, come and join, you'll get a straight ticket. And I said, no, I stayed in the opposition. And I was told, you will not see Parliament until... So I said, I can wait until you're out of the place. And I waited until 2007 when there was no, because 2002, there was still no elections in Northeastern Province, by the way. The Kanu regime was still in power, so they could choose who they wanted. But then 2007, they had no control of it. So I came back for 5 years. And then, of course, we got the Uhuru Ruto thing. And started off by stealing from Raila first in 2013. And everybody was there. And I did not lose the elections of 2013, by the way. Everybody knows that. But anyway, I still waited for 10 years when they left, and I came back again. This time, I hope we'll have some free and fair elections. And I don't know how much longer I'm going to stay. But so far, and my people have always wanted to vote for me. And I want to really thank them for all that support for all these years. Now, the other thing I want to tell you about, I was talking about the interest and the rest of it. Interest is haram in our faith.
Yes.
And you can see that is shylocking. This guy said, you collected so much, I think about 10 million or something like that over that period of time. Because the pension was just a couple 100,000. And the interest on all that money over that period of time was compounded to 15%. And I'm supposed to pay 40 million shillings, 39 million something, to buy back that. That's what you call a pension. When I buy back that pension, for us, I don't know how much longer I'm going to live. This is all up to God. You could live for 1 year and pass on, or you could live for another 30 years. It's only going to add maybe 100,000, 150,000 more. But they say you took this money and the interest that basically it would have accrued at the rate of 15%, compounded. You know what compounded is?
Yeah.
And then they came up with 23 million, something like that, for taking just over 10 million shillings in pension, for you to be able to buy back. So we have a serious Shylock, what do you call financial regime here in the country that essentially makes it impossible. I remember in the late 80s. Just before I came into Parliament. There's a time Treasury bond was given 78% returns. Listen to me carefully. 78% returns, 72% returns, which means you put in 10,000 shillings. At the end of the year, you get 7,200 as interest. Treasury. So the banks have got to make it higher than that, and that's why Kenyans will, can never succeed by buying properties through bank loans. This is a very bad regime.
Exorbitant.
This thing has got to come down to something reasonable, like 6%, 5%, something like that. So, but what we have right now, to try and subject it to the hustler people, if the big people with multiple businesses are unable to get that and they get auction their business all the time, and you subject a small person who is just starting business now, who has to have what they call the teething problems also, of doing that business and using the money and living on the money, off the money, and a small amount of money again, 100,000, maybe 150,000 shillings, and you still tell them to pay interest in addition to that, at that rate, I think that is not right.
Right.
Okay.
Now borrowing heavily from your banking knowledge as well.
First, I want to second my senior by saying that I took 4.2 or 4.5 million after my term, and when I went to look how much I can buy it back, I was given a figure of 6.2 million or thereabout. And I thought this was a little bit too much, and I just pray God that I come back to Parliament instead of buying back the pension. Maybe you don't know what we mean by buying back. When you exit Parliament, you know who are normally totally broke, so you can go and get your pension, no problem. They give you, when you come back to Parliament, you want to buy so that you continue, and now you are counted as a second term, so that when you retire from Parliament, you can have some monthly income. You have to buy back to balance the books. But that notwithstanding, I agree totally with him that interest rates in this country are crazy. But I am advantaged to have been one of those who established Uwezo Fund. Myself, Honorable Nyokabi and Honorable Wanga, particularly the structure which was fitting where the MPs would fall and do their mandate effectively. As you know that Uwezo Fund is basically an entity which is also being within the jurisdiction of an MP. And the reason why we were putting Uwezo Fund as interest-free is to make that revolving fund continue, because there is that aspect that when Kenyans are given with this interest rate, not only the integrity issue, it is also the ability. They may not have the ability. But what I think the president means that there is no free money, and in my own view, considering Uwezo versus what hustler will come, we may be structuring this hustler fund in a very friendly manner, where we may put an interest rate that will be discussed in details. Let's say something like 1%. Why? Coming
very minimal.
Yeah, very minimal. Why? Coming from a bank, and particularly Equity Bank, where I worked a number of years when it became a bank from a building society, and everyone flocked to Equity and people are borrowing and all that. It was a bit kind of chaotic in the beginning, because Kenyans have this perception that there can be free money and no need to return. So that aspect of, even if it's the minimum percentage, will always make the Kenyans mindset that this money, I should be responsible and return. Because free money is free money. Even if I give you 1,000 now and I don't ask for it back, the likelihood of you sharing with this guy 200, this guy 100, is very obvious. So the aspect of maybe having some interest would be to make this fund grow and people to be accountable. But what I believe, when the structure will be made, definitely it will be discussed in length, and we shall borrow all the experiences so that we put something on the table which is manageable, because it beats the logic to provide it, but people will not come for it. And this issue of interest is also tricky. Remember in 11th Parliament, when Honorable Judy Jomo brought the bill to curtail the interest rate for banks. If you remember, some years back, even when I worked in Equity, people were ringing bells and putting tents all over in the market, asking people to come for loans. And people were really coming for loans. But when the banks were put that they cannot go beyond the interest rates of central bank, the banks shied off.
The capping, yes.
The capping, the banks shied off. But again, the banks have also so much appetite in making so much billions. So there the government has a responsibility, us as people's representative have responsibility, because you also don't need to make so much billions as profit to your institution at the expense of Wanjiko. At least we could have, let's say, 6%, 7%, an interest rate that is reasonable. Otherwise, you get into your business of a small hotel, you get 100,000 as Mama Boga or any other business person, even a border rider who needs 70,000. The interest rate is 13. Before Judy Jomo even brought the capping, was going even to 18. Some banks, I know, I cannot
it was
mention
a
24%
sometimes. Yeah, indeed,
and we saw them going to the village and collecting tanks from mamas, and the banks become like supermarkets with goods to sell and no one to buy. So either the bank doesn't make money, the Mwananchi doesn't make money. So it's a critical area that we need to look soberly to balance. It's also a delicate balance, so that we give business continuity, we don't collapse them, but also for Wajiko to thrive. But I think for the Hustler Fund, I'm sure the Parliament will have some input, and I'm sure the experiences around will try to bring, if there is an interest rate, very, very minimum. But in my very, very open opinion, there should be something to make the mindset feel responsible.
And we're talking even about the administrative cost of it as well.
A very good example is Uwezo in Kipipiri constituency. I went to visit the Uwezo lady. I called her in my office. She's serving Kipipiri and Daragwa, 2 constituency, 1 lady. Now I have to provide as Mheshimiwa somebody to assist her, because how can 1 lady support 2 constituency, ensure the fund is given, train the people and all that. So even that lack of administrative cost also make the fund not to thrive, because the idea is not just to bring the fund, the idea is to bring the fund and let the fund go to the people.
All right, so I just want to take a short break right now. We run a commercial and we are just about to wind up. But the issue of the Hustler Fund also being disbursed through, telcos of choice. And I think this has been raised before, telcos of choice. Where is a competitive sort of spirit if we don't really subject it to competitive bidding at the end of the day? We've seen that Safaricom and NCBA, and they said with other telcos as well, but primarily we've seen the faces of these 2, NCBA and Safaricom, when we had the president, was it during the NSE? No, what, I can't remember that function, what it was. Let me take a short break. When I circle back, I think I'll have refreshed my memory.
KTN News. Get the whole story. With Cooperative Bank pre-owned car finance, anyone with an income can walk into a second-hand dealership and choose a car that best suits them within an 8-year age limit, and also get to enjoy 100% financing. It's simple. With Cooperative Bank, don't dream it, drive it, and we will help you buy it. Talk to us today on 0703 027 000. Cooperative Bank. We are you. KTN News. Get the whole story.
Welcome back. You're watching Siasa Fiesta here, tail end of the program right now, and we're looking at the Hustler Fund and it attracting interest, flying in the face of what the president had promised on the ground, that this will be collateral free. And that is the basis of a discussion. So how is it bound to affect you as Mwana Inchi? We can see the CBK also lending base rate has been raised, and the banks are supposed also to, of course, now follow suit and raise their interest rate. You'll be getting notification if you're serving, of course, a loan right now. If it's a mortgage or maybe a facility for your business as well, it's bound to attract an interest, just to keep in line on what is happening currently in the world. Farah, Wajiku, you had finished?
Yes.
Yes. So the question I was asking...
But that question of the bank now bringing the interest, they don't normally affect those who have already credit. They only affect the new entrants. So if I have a loan now and I'm paying, because I signed a contract with them that I took that loan on this percent.
But they normally have those teeny little bit of
in the bank they are called hidden charges.
It's bound. This is bound to, of course, change given the market rate and where we are right now. So you can have that here.
They know that people will.
I think a few banks have lately been, putting it that it will not change at all.
Yeah.
I took some from Cooperative Bank, I remember, but this Islamic whatever window, one time from bank through the Islamic window, and it does not change. Doesn't change.
I think the Hustler Fund should be a catalyst for businesses that are not been accessing credit. But then you cannot avoid the issue of inflation, loss of attrition of value for money. So my humble submission is that we need to have some kind of interest, but not so high, for administrative costs and also to recover the loss of the value for money without government making any form of profit in that regard. The question that also arises: would you want to fund groups? That has not worked very well because youth fund not quite, women fund limited, then Wezo fund. So you know the model of the Hustler Fund is you go to your circle. Remember, we did a lot of circle empowerment initiatives as UDA. Then those circles then know their members the best. So of course there will be proper regulation of those circles, but then you give this money to these circles, then they lend to their members. And we, removing all those bottlenecks around how then people are not able to access capital. Because the issue is people in the mainstream of the economy want to lend to government. The appetite for domestic borrowing, by banks and what have you, up to 100 and even 1 trillion actually, 900 billion plus. So really the Hustler Fund should not be seen as an equivalent of sorts within the definition of a normal loan. It should just be a catalyst for those people who are not able to, reach the normal way of borrowing to access credit, and so that they spur economic. With the current regime, these people are not going to access credit. And of course, they are open to Shylocks. But then the question is that if then there is a need, if you're hungry, you just have to eat the food that is available. If that's what you're given, even if you have to part with some part of your property or some part of your arm, maybe. So my take is that it needs to be well thought out, and we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Why am I saying so? Because it has been tried before. I remember when I was a young boy, hearing President Moi doing a harambe for the youth groups. And Harun Mwau gave a lot of money, 2.5 million, if I'm not wrong.
That was the highest.
That was the highest, and he made a lot of news as the peak, leader. So this has been done before. So what is it that we need to do differently? Now, when I was campaigning, I engaged in rural constituency, the one who was running the youth fund. And, she told me that the problem with the youth fund was that people are using the wrong IDs to actually register. So they get the money, then they disappear. So this thing of group, the group issue, which becomes like the social capital, the collateral, may not have worked very well for certain, because these people that are being lent to the BAL are not also very innocent. Let's not also try to make them look like they're angels. They are also scheming. And if they will get the money and divide and disappear, so be it. So you have to also have some safeguards. But I think it borders on the individual, because it is the individual Mamboga who knows how their business is doing. How then you tie that, that person to pay back and ensure that they are actually they maintain fidelity to that contractual relationship, and that this is not just free money, is really the masterstroke of how this Hustler Fund is going to work. Now, in donor funding, if I was to borrow from there, when you give unconditional grants, people tend to do better because they know what is best suited for them at that point in time. So I think in terms of assessment of what one is applying, that the motivation behind it, and of course the history of how that business has been done, it will be critical. Unfortunately, most of these people don't know how to do bookkeeping. So somebody doesn't know whether they're in business or they're eating their business or they're, that kind of thing. So there are also business development services that must also accompany this Hustler Fund. It's not just throwing money into a problem of lack of capital. So it has to be very well thought out, bringing the experience of previous failures and successes, so that then we get it right. Otherwise, if then it just becomes throwing money into people who do not have, it will just be another layer of funds that are available to government through an existing legislation, because it's a micro, small, enterprise or whatever act, without really resolving the problem. Yeah, no. and also, one of the things that we have identified in the Kenya Kwanza, the plan, is that there are too many businesses for the market, the BAL. Let me explain that.
Absolutely.
So that everybody is selling maize, but then is there a market? So people are underemployed. So the issue of value proposition if you are accessing the Hustler Fund, there must be some kind of market, segmentation, market zoning, market intelligence that shows these are the right kind of businesses that if they are funded, they spur the economy. Not just any other idea. It has to be tempered with the fact that there is a level of innovation that is required for the young people, which is, of course, is our fifth pillar or priority of the digital superhighway and the creative economy. That is critical. But for the kind of normal businesses, it has to be in terms of thematic. So that then also there is, you are funding a business that can also have a market for whatever product or service that is being provided for.
You know, I wanted actually to mention exactly what you said. You give people money to do what business? What is already being done? And there's no shortage. There's no shortage of, and the customers has not expanded. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
That business is still there. If somebody is going to be getting certain food from the farmers at the farm and then bringing it to the market, there are already too many people who are doing that. So all you need to do is that you dampen that. Either there's going to be no value for money because people are too much competition in there. My idea is this. We look at the macroeconomy itself. We are unable to feed ourselves right now. We are unable to feed ourselves as a country. We need to put more money into agricultural sector and to increase the production, increase the productivity. The way to do it, we've tried to do it through Galana Kulalu, we tried to do it through all those big dams and the rest of it, it's failed. They became victims of both corruption and other things, and it has failed anyway, because what belongs to everybody belongs to nobody. So my position is very simple. There's a lot of idle land that is there, millions and millions of acres that is there. That is, many of them are owned by very few individuals in some cases. Let us have some kind of a land policy, a new land policy, and have certain acquisition by the government of some of those lands, and settle the young people right now to go and do farming. Give them 5 acres, give them 3 acres, give them the farm implements, you get my point? Give them the fertilizers, and then depending on what area they are. The smallholders in the highlands where the coffee and the tea growers have been performing very well until the markets got dampened. The global, prices for coffee and the rest of it got dampened because we didn't have a proper structured organizational framework by the producing countries as opposed to the processing and the buying countries. The processing and the buying countries are the first world. The producing countries are the third world, people like us and Brazil and the rest of it. So that also needs to be really tampered with and worked on. But in my opinion, put more land and agriculture. Allocate more families land the way we were doing it during the colonial time. Let there be some kind of a compulsory acquisition of at least 1 million, 2 million, 3 million acres from some of this idle land that's there. Settle people in those lands. Families, actually, as a matter of fact. And then demand what you call production. You'll be surprised.
And we have a lot of these parastatals who are owning huge tracts
of
land,
parastatals, individuals, God knows who.
I think I've heard the president also speaking to that some of these very good,
idle land,
the idle land
should there has to be a compulsory acquisition of that, and then settle Kenyans, not for free. Let them also pay some money back. The same way there were land buying, companies in the early days, Hikika Kimani and the rest of it, Makutani and the rest of it, But this time, let the government handle this. And then settle 1 million families, 2 million families. People who will do farming and then monitor the production. And that production is let's have agricultural extension workers out there. Let us work on the markets of these things. First of all, let us eliminate our own importation of food from outside the country. You see what I mean? Feed our people. Let's have a food security here. And then seek also big amounts for export outside. Those families will be millionaires within a very short period of time. You can easily get 1 million families that will be able to generate from 5 acres of a piece of land at least 1 million every year. Not only will they be secure themselves, you get my point. Go to the dry lands.
All right. I needed to ask you, Farah, what about now, when you're talking about interest, instead of now really attracting interest, just as we've had these guarantee schemes as well, and we've been talking about the PPP, the private-public partnership, spirit that we are really, streamlining in this country. Why can't we get, some private also stakeholders on this as a guarantor to this credit facility instead of attracting that interest?
Let me tell you one thing. Personally, I've been involved in a number of ventures, social welfare ventures, and I've realized that wherever there's a goodwill and there's honesty and integrity, you will never be short of philanthropists who will want to come into these things because they can see the results.
Indeed.
They can see the results. Let me tell you.
The angel investors.
I'll give you one simple example, which is my own. It was in my own family. We tried to change the way the PGH, the only referral hospital we have in the country, was being run in the late 90s and early 2000. And we just couldn't do anything about it. The place was a den of sickness as opposed to becoming a place of curing people. Finally, when we went there, we went to the team from outside, from Italy, as a matter of fact, who came to me because they wanted to do an investment in Somalia. Insecurity was too much. They said, let's go to a place similar to Somalia. So they wanted to go to Garissa and do something. So we went there. I happened to be married to a lady who's a medical doctor. When we went in there, we were shocked. The stench in the hospital, you feel it, at least a kilometer away. And the place was just too bad. When we came back annoyed personally. Why is this? You people want to, the colonial government was not doing anything. So we came in there when we did not have a single secondary school. We got independence when we didn't have a single secondary school in the whole of NFD. You're talking about 6 districts those days, almost half of the country. So when I came back and I came to Professor Meme and I complained very hard, and Professor Oma Muga, who was the DMS, Director of Medical Services, and the other one was PS. Meme just looked at me and said, listen, I've tried everything I could have done in Garissa. I sent your people. You brought me doctors from your community. I sent them there. That place cannot change. That place is dead. And finally he said, do you want to really sacrifice this? Why don't you send your wife there? And we look at one another. He said, you want to sacrifice? You're shouting at me. Yeah. You have your wife, she's got a good clinic in here, she's a consultant, she's doing a couple of hours in Kenyatta Hospital, and there she is making millions, you know what I mean, in Nairobi here. And you want to, other people to go and sacrifice for your people. Why can't she sacrifice? So me and my wife look at one another.
Hard call.
Hard call.
I'm telling you.
And then we decided she was going to go there. You know what? From being the worst run referral provincial hospital in the country, in 3 years' time, from having only 2 doctors, 1 administrator and only one MO, in 3 years' time, it was the best run medical facility in the country, public medical facility in the country, with 10 consultants, 16 doctors, MOs, and 20 interns, teaching hospital. And literally she was so overwhelmed that she had a problem. The donors were coming in, Danida was coming in, the Americans were coming in, DFID was coming in, everybody was coming with tons and tons of money and saying, what can we do for you? Listen to me carefully. What can we do for you? So what I'm trying to say is that if this program can be run that well, and you can have integrity, honesty, and hard work, competence, meritocracy, and all that on those things, there will be donors from all over the world, because every international donor in the rich countries would want to be identified with a success story. If they see a success story, like the Grameen Bank, I don't know if you remember the Grameen Bank of Bangladesh way back. I don't know if he's still alive, that guy, Dr. Somebody.
Yeah. Where Equity borrowed the...
Yes, Mohammed, I don't know if he's still alive, And everybody, that man, in the shortest possible time, had money from all over the world. So if anything can be run, the trick, the catchword, is run it good, proper meritocracy, and everything else. You understand my point?
Thank you.
If in 3 years' time, you can have that kind of a transformation where you have 10 consultants. There was not a single consultant before. Teaching there, a teaching hospital. And with construction, millions of dollars of money poured into it by this donor community. And additional, what do you call, wards, additional everything, theaters, and the rest of it. This, if any program is run well, the goodwill is there globally. So let's first of all strive to run it well.
Thank you.
Not a cash cow for corrupt guys to come
indeed.
And the entrepreneurs and deal makers who have struggled. And they're everywhere, by the way.
Indeed, yeah. We'll see how actually now the administration will try to deal with these, crooks as well, who will take, the vultures, who are always hovering around, waiting for that opportunity to make their kill as well. Even as we're bringing it to a close, I'd raise a very critical question, and I want you maybe to respond to it as we're winding up now. In terms of choosing how you can disburse these funds, because we've seen the president, at a launch, having the Safaricom and NCBA as well, as a choice of, channeling this money alongside other telcos as well. And people were saying for the good optics, it would have been nice to have, even all the sector from that particular telco sector, for that particular launch where it was, to show that at least even these funds is building some of these telcos as well. We have the Airtel, we have Telcom, which is now a full parastatal, and they're trying to prop it up because 3% for every transaction on this fund will go to build this monolith that we already have, or Safaricom as it is. So from a business perspective,
yes,
do you think when you're talking about neutrality, should that have been the wisest of fashion to deal with this hustler fund?
That word, business, underline that, business. When you look at this telecom institutions,
but then, yes,
of course, Safaricom has done very well. It's a success story in all avenues. And this is a fund. Fund is very delicate. But of course, there are many avenues. Maybe in my view, I would have said we could use two sectors, maybe the cooperative circles, which also are not very success stories.
And you have the channels, yes.
They have already collapsed. Also, Wezo Fund, in my view, I could have said we collapse it and put it in Wezo, because Wezo is, of course, a success story. It has a structure and will not have time to establish and all that. But Safaricom is also reachable in terms of the presence. It is present. Its presence is everywhere. So maybe those are the thoughts. But let me say, as a member of Kenya Kwanza, we haven't sat to have this subject in details and maybe evaluate, or we put our input. So I would believe that maybe the presence of Safaricom, its institution being a success story in almost every avenue, SIM maybe can take care of the interest of the FAD, because we are also afraid that the FAD can come on board and collapse. It will only not leave the shame to the government, but loss. And to recover financial loss is also very difficult. So I think it's still very early stage to discuss in details. In my view, I feel we need more conversation. And different sectors need to come on board. We need more conversation on this so that it can kickstart.
Okay.
Yes, I think when we were campaigning, we were talking about big business, and the domination of markets and capture of markets. When you have more participants, you spread the risk. There is, of course, the element of going to mediocre, not very well structured, outfits. But that's actually the essence of hustler. You want to have more people, getting a market share. Of course, telcos and other, intermediaries should not look at this as just an opportunity to get a bite at the cherry. A piece of the pie. It should be about service delivery to the people rather than their profit-making, meals. Because if they do so, then they will still add so many, administrative costs to the disbursement of this fund. So there should be a proper study. There should be an eligibility criterion that is not just eliminated for the sake of it, and it should be well leveraged, in my humble submission. Of course, a lot has not happened, because the minister has yet to be appointed. You need a PS there. You need to look at the various agencies that would do similar kind of work. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The only thing that for sure, and the president has given a commitment on this, is that by December, the money shall be available. I expect the National Assembly to do a supplementary budget, because the budget we have currently is really the budget of the previous administration. So to get monies, where do you get this 50 billion? That is the first, port of call. But then now the structures will, of course, determine who is actually going to go for it. You cannot ignore, obviously, companies such as the one that has been mentioned, because they are more established and they have also been used to disburse, even the COVID-19, cash transfer intervention, that kind of thing. But then also, I believe there could be very good novel ideas, that are resident within small entities that could actually be the game changer. They could be the disruption that we are looking for. So it's also a question for people to volunteer, to be patient, and I believe that decision will be made after having assessed all the scenarios. I still want to insist, Debal, that we need to also have a very clear criterion on which areas are going to be funded by the Hustler Fund. You get that really will inform, so that people, monies are also aspirational, just like power. So that people know that if you want to access the Hustler Fund, you have to invest in this, and of course, obviously, because we've not satisfied our needs in terms of food. Then that requires some focus, especially in terms of production of wheat, production of rice, and I'm very happy that the president launched the Thiba Dam. We can do something again in Tana River around the Bura irrigation scheme. We can do something about the Ahero scheme, for example, for rice, those kind of things, and the forwards and the supply chain kind of thing. Then also the issues to do with cooking oil. If you look at the newspaper today, I think in the Daily Nation, you can see there has been an increase in terms of the prices. So do we want to invest in that kind of industry? We were at some point the #1 producer of pyrethrum. What has happened to it? So it's really not just a question of who is holding the 50 billion to accrue interest, in terms of the current, fixed deposits accounts and whatever.
Yes.
And also having capital to operate with, for other services. This is also the point, Debar. What value are you? What is the value addition are you giving in terms of disbursing the Hustler Fund? What are you also giving to enable this to be a success? So that also needs to be qualified, so that then people also support the would-be beneficiaries in terms of making their business outfit successful.
Indeed. When we talk about the corporate responsibility, using this particular channel, because I think one telco is reckoning at least 3% from every transaction that will be made on this on their channel or on their infrastructure.
Let me tell you one thing. I mean, Safaricom, using the cutting edge of information technology in some of these things, and using some of these big corporations to come on board also for purposes of what you call corporate discipline and to grow these businesses is a good thing. But let me just give you one thing. For me, in my opinion, the entry point would be two. One is farming, go back to farming. Compulsory acquisition of at least 1 million, 2 million acres and distribute it to Kenyans at the rate of 3 acres or 4 acres or 5 acres, and then let them pay over a period of time, and let's see that experimentation with that. But more than anything else, when a country is in the state we are right now, you compare it to the Belgium history. In Belgium, there are 3 communities who live in that place. There are the Flemish, who are basically Dutch-speaking, closer to Dutch, and there's the Walloons, which are the French-speaking. The Walloons have always been kind of a privileged side, and the royalty language was that from those early days, from Leopold, who came and did terrible things to Congo. The Flemish were more or less a kind of a permanent underclass, but somehow they took onto the cooperatives in the early, the beginning of the 18th century, 1900, from then on, 1922 actually to be exact. And they worked through what they call the cooperative societies. They worked magics, so much so that invariably every time the prime minister you have in Belgium is a Flemish. Now, what I would see myself is that we have had one very powerful success story in this country, the Cooperative Bank of Kenya. The Cooperative Bank of Kenya started off initially as a very small thing, and at the time, in I think 2002, it was already in debt and collapsing. Today, it's the 3rd largest bank in the country. And that thing is owned by cooperative society, the cooperative movement, largely. So this Hustler Fund, in my opinion, should draw in on some of the experiences and the knowledge, the institutional experience of an institution like Cooperative Bank.
Thank you.
You get my point? Thank you. To some extent, I think Equity Bank also started as a building society.
Yes.
Not as a cooperative, not for smallholders. But this one started off as a smallholders thing. So if we can build on that history, build on other histories like the Belgium history of the Flemish and how that thing progressed over a period of time.
Thank you.
I think we can make a revolution. It might take us a bit of time, but you can rest assured this country is going to be a different country 20 years, 15 years down the line.
Farah Alim, Member of Parliament, thank you for coming through this morning. I really do appreciate it. As a former politician, thank you for coming through this morning. Wajigo here. It's been a while, and yes, welcome back home. Yeah, after going to the East Africa community, you want to say something briefly?
Yes.
We're winding up. I'm actually being handed over studio.
Yes,
I don't even have time.
Yes, I just want to thank the people of Kipipiri for electing me and finding that I am the next MP. But I want to caution the contractors. We have contractors in the whole country who are building the road so slowly, yet during campaign they were building the roads day and night.
Thank you.
So we have one road called Captain Wajohi Geta Road.
Thank you.
That road is permanently slowly moving. I want to caution them that they up their game.
Thank you.
And also,
I need to wind up. I need to wind up.
Namely by Tavene Construction.
Thank you very much for your valued company. And we'll leave you these pictures on the front page of a Star, which is very telling right now. And in light of what the country is going through, this is the drought. You can see this emaciated woman there being assisted by Red Cross personnel there. And coming down, the carcasses there of, cattle. We have donkeys as well. This one is being propped up, as you can see there.